Hi everyone and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Tom, and today it's our News Watch unit. It is also our all-English lecture today. Hey, you've got an extra treat here because we've got all English in two forms. We've got British English and we've got American English, so you're getting the best of both worlds, aren't you?
That's right. There is a British connection, certainly to one of these news stories we're going to look at today. The first one, though, is going to be about commercial space flights. Is that something you would ever consider, Tom, going up into space?
Does sound exciting, but, if I had that kind of money, I'd feel guilty about spending it on something like that when there are so many children starving in the world and there are so many refugees without homes and stuff like that. So I don't know how these guys go to bed at night thinking they spent all that money for their big egos instead of helping poor people and stuff like that. But on the other hand, it does sound like something very exciting to do, to go into outer space.
It is one of those tough kind of decisions. You're like, that sounds so amazing, but there are a lot of other things that I could do. We'll find out exactly how much money people are paying as we read through first this article and then our second news story, which is about how modern developments are causing a kind of potentially controversial change in a city in the UK. But let's read through our News Watch and learn more.
What's written in the stars for commercial space flights? Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, commercial spaceflight enterprises owned by Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos respectively, both launched manned commercial spaceflights in July. Branson and Bezos are now establishing plans for more trips. At least 600 people have paid $250,000 each to fly with Virgin Galactic, while Blue Origin has said it anticipates 2 more launches in 2021. However, some critics are questioning the new industry's value. One criticism is the immensely negative environmental impacts. The rocket's carbon footprint is nearly 100 times higher than those of traditional airplanes. Some wonder if this cost is worthwhile, considering these spaceflights only last between 10 and 90 minutes and are only affordable to those who have wealth to flaunt. In addition, it's yet to be seen how safe these flights will be for civilians who haven't had the demanding training that goes into spaceflight preparation. As the industry advances, the UK has started setting out regulations. Whether other governments will follow suit or whether these regulations will actually ease the negative effects is not yet known.
Modern developments bring bad news for UK city. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, UNESCO, stripped Liverpool, UK of its World Heritage status in July 2021. Liverpool, a major port city in the 18th and 19th centuries, was awarded the status in 2004 for its pioneering dock technology, transport systems and port management. However, the city's waterfront has changed so much that UNESCO no longer believes Liverpool deserves the title. A report published by UNESCO's World Heritage Committee claimed that Liverpool's changes had resulted in irreversible loss of attributes. This can largely be traced to the addition of a soccer stadium, as well as plans for apartment buildings, skyscrapers, and a cruise ship terminal in empty areas of the waterfront. The government had taken steps to ensure new developments would contribute money to the restoration and inclusion of heritage property. Now, the loss of Liverpool's status has many residents wondering if the city can have both historical significance and modern progress, or if it will be forced to choose one.
Okay, it's time for us to talk about the contents of today's lesson for today. Again, it's our News Watch unit for the month of December. And we're asking a question here. What's written in the stars for commercial space flights? Sometimes we say that when we talk about our future, like what is your destiny in your life? If you talk to a fortune teller, yeah, what's written in the stars? What's my future going to be like? And so, yeah, what's the future going to be like for commercial space flights? In other words, people flying into space when they pay money and they're not astronauts working for some national space program for exploring space.
Right, this is not for NASA kind of stuff. This is people who are doing it just because they want to. Generally very, very, very rich people doing this. So we start by saying that Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, commercial spaceflight enterprises owned by Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos respectively, both launched manned commercial space flights in July. Richard Branson, if you guys haven't heard of him, he is a British owner of Virgin Airlines and a bunch of other kind of related agencies. Is an extremely rich man and he's had the dream of going into space for a long time. Jeff Bezos is the owner of Amazon, of course. And we use the word respectively here when referring to these two companies and these two people to show that they appear in the same order, meaning Virgin Galactic is owned by Richard Branson and Blue Origin is owned by Jeff Bezos. That's what respectively means. It's just saying it is in the order as it was written.
Exactly. So, yes, Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos, of course, want to go into space. I think they already have. And yes, indeed, they both launched manned commercial space flights back in July. Now, Branson and Bezos are now establishing plans for more trips. Yes, indeed, they can't get enough. They want to go back. At least 600 people have paid a lot of money, $250,000 US, $250,000 US. They have paid that amount each to fly with Virgin Galactic, while Blue Origin had anticipated 2 more launches in 2021. It's now December, so perhaps those flights have already taken place. So again, a lot of people are willing to fork out a lot of money just to say that they've been into outer space.
That's right, and that's a lot of money. So you kind of wonder, is this going to end up being profitable for the companies if they're going to be making that much for a ticket? They've spent a lot of money designing, building, doing launches and all the rest. So will they break even? Who knows? What we do know, though, however, some critics are questioning the new industry's value. So a critic could be somebody who takes a look at like a movie or a book and says what they like and what they don't like about it. They kind of come at it from quite an objective point of view. Here, though, we're using the word critic to mean just people saying negative things about a decision, about a government policy. If you're in government, you're going to have critics from the opposition party or the media or in the public saying, well, why did you make that decision? That's a bad decision. You've forgotten about this thing. So that's the difference between a professional critic who would review something and the meaning of critic here, which is somebody who says negative things. And these people are saying, well, is this commercial space flight, is this worth it? Why are they doing it? Is it a valuable thing?
Yeah, can we all benefit from this, or is it just helping these guys brag about flying to space and it has no other purpose besides that? So that's what these critics are questioning. Yeah, is this really necessary? Does this really help out humankind? It is indeed a good question. Now let's move on to the next paragraph here. It says, one criticism is the immensely negative environmental impacts. So we did have the word critic, and a related word is criticism. That just means it's one argument against something. So, of course, you've got lots of commentators on TV with lots of criticisms against the government. In all sorts of countries, of course, they're criticizing the government, except in some countries where that, of course, is illegal. But we've got a criticism here of this action here of going into space. They're criticizing the negative environmental impacts. Yes, indeed, it does harm the environment when these rockets go up into outer space.
And we follow up on that sentence with an actual detail, a supporting detail. The rocket's carbon footprint is nearly 100 times higher than those of traditional airplanes. Now, a lot has been written about how airplanes and the fuel they burn is bad for the environment, and these rockets seem to be 100 times worse, at least in terms of their carbon footprint. The carbon footprint is the total greenhouse gas emissions, so the amount of greenhouse gas that's produced by, it could be an individual, an event, an organization, could be a product, something like this, a rocket launch or a plane flight. And it includes lots of different types of gases, but they express it, they talk about it in terms of how much carbon dioxide or equivalent of carbon dioxide. And that's why we use carbon footprint. It's measuring things like how much CO2, this bad gas, does this release into the environment. It's kind of like a simple way to look at how bad something is in terms of the gases it releases into the air.
Right, so if you take a flight from Taipei to Hong Kong, for example, you're going to produce X amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere along with other gases. But if you take this rocket up into space like Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos did, then you're going to be producing 100 times that amount. So that's a lot of carbon dioxide that is going into the atmosphere and contributing to global warming or to climate change. So again, that's a bad thing. And some wonder if this cost is worthwhile, considering these space flights only last between 10 and 90 minutes and are only affordable to those who have wealth to flaunt. So yeah, is it worthwhile? Is it worth it? Do we benefit from this, or is it just a waste of time and it is satisfying these guys' egos?
Exactly. Because these guys, what we know about them is that they have wealth to flaunt. To flaunt something is to really show it off so that everybody can see you have it. There's no attempt to kind of be humble or modest about it. It's, look at me, I'm wealthy, here's all the money I have. And it's usually seen, if you're flaunting something, it's often seen as a negative thing. This is not really a positive quality. So the next sentence says, in addition, it's yet to be seen how safe these flights will be for civilians who haven't had the demanding training that goes into spaceflight preparation. Of course, NASA astronauts, people who work on the International Space Station, they have months and years of training to prepare themselves for these kind of things. If you're a civilian, in other words, you're an ordinary person, you don't have this kind of military or special professional experience training, if you're just a regular person, that's what a civilian is, then you might not be ready for what it feels like to basically blast out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, we don't really need any training to ride in a plane, but if you're going to go up into space, you need some demanding training, how to deal with zero gravity and how to deal with various forces and things like that. So yes, indeed, you do need that demanding training. And as the industry advances, the UK has started setting out regulations. So they know things are happening here. So the government of the UK has decided, yep, we're going to introduce some regulations here to make sure things are okay. Whether other governments will follow suit or whether these regulations will actually ease the negative effects is not yet known. It is yet to be seen. So here we've got the term follow suit. That just means other people do the same thing as the first person did. So the UK is going to set out these regulations. Well, will the US do that? Will Japan do that? Will China do that? Will they follow suit with their own regulations?
That's right, and this comes from playing cards. You may know there are 4 suits in a deck of cards: hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades. So in many games, if one person plays a heart first, the next person has to also play a heart. That's called following suit. So as Tom says, it means doing the same thing as some people already did. So we're not sure of what the final effect of any laws or rules that these governments make is, or whether this will make these rockets better for the environment. It's a situation we'll have to keep watching. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll be talking about our second news story.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Now we're going to talk about our second news story for this month. We've got some modern developments which are bringing bad news for a city in the UK, and that city specifically is Liverpool.
Yeah, it's over on the west coast of the UK. It was, and we'll see what its past was all about, because that's a major part of this story. It begins by saying the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Culture Organization, UNESCO for short, stripped Liverpool, UK of its World Heritage status in July 2021. So UNESCO is this group within the UN. They look after, as it says, educational, scientific and cultural things. They kind of choose sites and places around the world and say, these places are important. We will contribute money to make sure that they can be preserved for future generations. We're going to say it's officially recognized as being important for people's culture or for education reasons or for scientific reasons. And they give it a World Heritage status or status. Both pronunciations are okay. But Liverpool has just lost the one it had.
Exactly. So the UK, or more specifically UNESCO, has stripped Liverpool of its World Heritage status, and that had to do with its port, which we'll get to in just a second. But here we've got the verb phrase to strip someone or something of something. That means you take away something from them, usually some kind of title. Like you may have heard about Lance Armstrong. He was stripped of his Lance Armstrong was stripped of his Tour de France titles after he was caught cheating.
Yeah, that was definitely a bad thing for him, but, he shouldn't have done it in the first place. You could also strip somebody of some... It's generally a punishment. You've had this thing, you got this kind of title or status, and then you lose it because either you do something bad or, in this case, make too many changes. So why did Liverpool have this status? We see that Liverpool, a major port city in the 18th and 19th centuries, was awarded the status in 2004 for its pioneering dock technology, transport systems and port management. So Liverpool is right close to the sea. It's on a big river called the Mersey. It has a large amount of dockland, waterfront. Big ships used to come up there. There was boat building yards and all that kind of stuff. It was a major port city, and that's what gave it this status, recognized for what it has contributed to the UK's science, culture and education.
Come to think of it, I think Titanic was actually constructed there in Liverpool as well. So indeed, it's pioneering there for its dock technology and for its transport systems and port management. So if something's pioneering, it's like the first in the field. They've done these things first before anybody else did these things. So, of course, if you're constructing a harbor someplace and you want to know how things are done, you need to look to Liverpool because it had some pioneering technology there, but I guess they're not so great anymore, so that's why the UN wants to strip them of that title.
Right, the article says, however, the city's waterfront has changed so much that UNESCO no longer believes Liverpool deserves the title. The waterfront is basically the part of the city that is next to either the river or the sea. It's where ships load and unload things. It's where people come on and get off. There's often a lot of storage facilities, warehouses, a lot of equipment. If you think down in Kaohsiung, there's a big waterfront area all around the Love River and Kaohsiung's port. So think of that kind of part of Kaohsiung, and Liverpool is kind of got the same thing going on. Lots of things overlooking the river, overlooking the sea, lots of industry and cultural stuff based around that area.
Yep, times move on and the city has changed a lot and the waterfront isn't what it used to be, and the UN knows about this stuff and they've looked at it and they decided they've decided that Liverpool no longer deserves the title. So here we've got the verb to deserve. That means you should have it. You merit that thing. You've earned it and you should have it. So, of course, if you're an athlete and you win a competition, you deserve to win because you've trained hard, you won the competition, therefore you should be the champion. You deserve to be the champion. And here the UN, or more specifically again, UNESCO, no longer thinks that Liverpool deserves the title. Maybe that title should go to somebody else.
And we go into a bit more detail about these changes in the next paragraph. We see that a report published by UNESCO's World Heritage Committee, so this is clearly the people in charge of these decisions, claimed that Liverpool's changes had resulted in irreversible loss of attributes. If something is irreversible, you can't reverse it. So that you can see with the IR prefix there makes it a negative thing. Reversible, irreversible. What they're saying is that Liverpool has changed so much, it can't go back to being what it was. There's no way you could go back to how it looked in the past, the way it worked in the past, so therefore it is an irreversible loss. And the attributes are all the old buildings, the way things used to work, all of this stuff we mentioned in the first paragraph, a lot of that is gone.
Right. So again, as Pat said, irreversible means it can't change. We hear this word nowadays when we talk about climate change. I think a lot of scientists now think that it's irreversible now. We've already gone past the tipping point and the world is just going to get hotter and hotter and we're going to have big trouble in the future. So make preparations for that. It's irreversible. But if you take off the prefix here, IR, then you get reversible, which means you can go backwards. When I see the word reversible, I think about the old suits they used to sell. You could get a reversible vest. Inside the suit, you could turn it inside out and wear it that way with a different color or a different kind of cloth or something like that. That's what reversible means. But again, we've got some irreversible changes in Liverpool. And again, these changes have resulted in irreversible loss of attributes. It's just not the same as it used to be. So that's why UNESCO thinks that Liverpool should be stripped of its title.
Yeah, there's a few more examples here of what's been done to Liverpool in recent times. The article says, this can largely be traced to the addition of a soccer stadium, as well as plans for apartment buildings, skyscrapers, and a cruise ship terminal in empty areas of the waterfront. The Dockland Stadium is actually for Everton, the second big team in the city. They want to move to a bigger stadium that'll increase their income and stuff like that. It's been kind of soccer news for a good long while now, but that means that a whole area has to be redeveloped because you can't just have a stadium. You need buildings around it. You need roads to go there. So they're building skyscrapers, which are very tall buildings, apartment buildings, and a cruise ship terminal. So a terminal is kind of like a station for a bus or a train, but we tend to use it either for big ships or airplanes. If you go off to the Taoyuan airport, there's Terminal 1, Terminal 2, each one for different airlines flying to different destinations. Heathrow in London has 4, maybe 5 terminals now, different kind of buildings and areas. So the terminal is the building, it's the area where the ship is, the bit where you enter, the parking spaces and all the stuff around it. So that, of course, is another new set of development for great big cruise ships that go around the world.
Right, so if you want to take a cruise from Liverpool, you can get on a ship there and maybe it will take you, over to Ireland or up to Scotland or something like that. You can go see the sights there. So, of course, there are going to be cruise ships there. I believe here in Taiwan, Geelong is a cruise ship terminal. A lot of people take cruises out of Geelong and the boats go over toward Japan and Korea and places like that. So, yes, indeed, this is a big change for Liverpool there, and you did mention Everton there, a soccer club, but we should mention that a soccer stadium is what we would call it in the US, but you guys are going to call it a football stadium, right?
Yeah, football stadium or just football ground. You'll often hear, it's a great ground. in kind of how people talk about it. Now, of course, the government was aware that there were going to be these changes. The government agreed to make these changes, but it seemed that they didn't do enough. We do read in the next paragraph, the government had taken steps to ensure new developments would contribute money to the restoration and inclusion of heritage property. So what this sentence means is the government helped with this planning. They had to sign off on it, but they hoped that these new buildings, the soccer stadium and the rest, would get them money. The money that would come in would mean they could restore some of the old buildings. So restoration is the noun form of restore, and restoration means taking an old building that's kind of got damaged and started to fall apart and not knocking it down and building something new, but kind of try to recreate the old feeling of what it was. Put it back together in a way so it keeps all of its kind of old character, old look, and so on.
Yeah, I should mention that our office here for our company, nearby in the neighborhood, there are some old Japanese houses that were built during the Japanese colonial era, and there's been some restoration going on recently. Those houses were falling apart. They were in disrepair, so they've been rebuilding them. They have been restoring them, so we could say some restoration has been going on, and that's supposed to be what's going on in Liverpool here. These new projects, these new apartment buildings, the soccer stadium and stuff are supposed to be contributing money to these new projects, and they're supposed to be contributing money to the restoration, and also they need to contribute money to the inclusion of heritage property. So inclusion is when something is included.
Yeah, in this case, it would mean these old buildings aren't being knocked down. They're being made into part of what's going on. Like, let's keep this old building. Let's kind of make it a visitor center so people can learn about it, not just ignore it. That's what they planned anyway. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to have worked. And which leads to our concluding sentence. Now, the loss of Liverpool's status has many residents wondering if the city can have both historical significance and modern progress, or if it will be forced to choose one, which I guess a lot of cities have to face. How much of the past can we keep as we build towards the future? It's a fine line to walk between those two extremes.
Indeed. So, of course, that's a question that people here in Taiwan could ask concerning restoration of old historical buildings. Of course, developers want to go in and put up these big luxury apartment complexes and make a ton of money, but they might have to tear down some old houses, some old Sanheyuan or something like that. They might think, well, that's nice to have these old houses around, but, this is a city and people need places to live. It's nice that we have these old houses, but sorry, we just got to tear them down and build something new. So yes, indeed, there is this kind of push and tug, I guess, or tug. What's the term?
Back and forth, or so basically a decision to be made, one or the other. Which one is going to be the more important if you can't have both?
Indeed. So that's the question that Liverpool is facing here. So yes, indeed, can they be an historical can they have historical significance there, or do they want to have modern progress? And I don't know. I don't live in Liverpool. I'm not quite sure, but I hope they make the right decision, and hopefully someday I'll be able to go there. But I don't think I'd go to the harbor so much. I think I'd want to go to Penny Lane and Strawberry Field to see where the Beatles grew up.
Yeah, go to the Cavern Club. I have. It's still there.
Probably pretty cool. Okay, yeah, they know how to preserve those things for sure. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. We've certainly had a very interesting lesson for all of you today, completely in English, so there's no Chinese teacher, and we'll see the Chinese teacher next time, and we'll see all of you next time. So from all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Pat.
Goodbye.
Bye.